Hey everyone, this is James from TDB bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be talking about bitter ripe, and I am going to be brewing one of them, the 2024 Yunnan sourcing Lao Manna ripe. And Lao Manna, I gotta tell you, if you want to find a bitter ripe, that is probably the number one area to watch out for. Definitely read the vendor descriptions as well, because it's absolutely possible to have a not bitter ripe from there, but that seems to be a popular area. Lao Manna kind of famous for having a very particular bitter profile to it, a lot of bitter leaf in there. And these teas are interesting because it's almost a completely different tea type. You might think, oh, it's just a different subgenre of ripe. And in a way that is correct. But for me at least, I like to brew ripe in a way because ripe's attributes, you think about what it's good at. Well, it doesn't get very harsh or bitter very easily. So it's kind of ideally suited towards a fairly casual brewing style, especially because it's usually not too expensive. And so a perfect example of this is the 2009 Purple Mark that Yunnan sells, which is technically a ripe raw blend, but due to kind of that Yunnan aggressive Hong Kong traditional storage, it has it's more or less kind of a ripe, at least in my rotation at least. So that's what I have here in the Big Blue Pot, and that's how I do most of my ripes. They need to be fairly robust, but and not get too bitter or too aggressive too quickly. But a lot of this new trend of ripes and whatnot is creating teas that still have this bitterness. So there's a couple times where I'm like, okay, it sounds interesting. Let's try out this one, and I'll brew it in my Big Blue Pot. And it's just straight nasty. It does not work in the same way that you can brew kind of these traditionally stored ripes, or just even a normal ripe in that way. So in that sense, it fits a totally different niche. For me, at least, I would need to kind of sit down and have kind of a gong fu style version of it. Which is a very, very different way for me drinking ripe. That's all fine, because there's a lot of different tea types that just don't quite fit into the rotation. And I suspect bitter ripe is eventually going to be one of those. But it is interesting, so I do want to talk about it too. So shout outs to Jack Flapper for sending us over this 2024 Yunnan sourcing Lao Manna sample. A lot of these teas, too, will sometimes have low fermentation. That's another way to kind of create this bitterness. But a lot of the bitterness, especially in this tea, I think, is associated specifically with the leaf chosen from Lao Manna. I really struggle to know what to do with it, but we're going to drink this here, and we want this tea to show its best, so we're going to be doing it in a gaiwan. Let's get that kettle going. Okay, so this is going to be interesting just because I was just having some raw before. So if you are newer to tea drinking, what you might not know is that if you are having something beforehand, it's definitely going to impact your palate a little bit coming into the next tea. And the contrasts of the tea are going to be emphasized a little bit more. So because raw is a little bit bitter, you would expect that ripe might taste a little smoother in comparison. That being said, this is a Lao Manna ripe, so it could be quite strong. So let's get into it. I gotta say, nose smells pretty good. You definitely get kind of these dark cocoa notes to it. Lao Manna is kind of known for being a big, brash sort of tea. You can definitely find some raw from this area as well, or at least supposedly from this area. Cheers. And it's kind of marketed as the sort of contrast to something like Lao Van Zhang, which has like a bitterness that's not quite as persistent as the Lao Manna one. That's bitter, man. That's real bitter. So you can definitely understand how, like I'm brewing this in the morning, and I brew up some cups, and you can brew normal ripe, and it looks like this. It tastes totally fine. But this is strong. This is thick. It's definitely somewhat oily. You can taste some like kind of dark chocolate notes in it. It's definitely one of those brace for impact sort of teas. Oh, that is. I think I overdid it on that one. Doing all this raw. This one is definitely more bitter than the raw I was just drinking. So perhaps I overdid it, but I did just give it a splash. So we're gonna brew this again. And the bitterness is not the quick conversion type. It's definitely lingering on my tongue in particular. Interesting. Cheers. Probably just do 3 of this. The bitterness is the first thing you taste. This one's a little more palatable, a little more vanilla, creamy. Yeah, this is nice, yeah. I can see how one might like something like this too. When I did a kind of drinking report, drinking through a bunch of higher end ripes, these teas were definitely some of the prominent selection, and I kind of labeled it as sort of more of the ass kicker type. So if you want to explore kind of more modern, higher end ripe, you're definitely going to run into teas such as this one. And it definitely has a sort of appeal. That being said, I don't think the appeal is one that like a normal ripe drinker is necessarily going to like. So someone like myself that drinks it very casually, I almost feel like the ideal case for this is for raw drinkers that just want kind of a curveball in their lineup just to try something a little bit different. So definitely got to keep this infusion extremely short if we want it to be good. And you can see even as short as that is, it's brewing up real dark. You can almost tell from this that the viscosity is quite thick to this tea. I mean, it's amazing that these things are still ripe. I feel like I did get a little acclimated to that bitterness at some point for some of these teas, and now not having had them in a couple months, coming back to this is real strong. Yeah, I mean, this is not a tea to be taken lightly. So yeah, some of the good attributes to this are that it is strong, it is oily. It's really heavy in kind of like those dark cocoa notes. I think it has a nice clarity and focus to its profile as well. It's definitely not smooth in like, well, I guess it's smooth in a way, but certainly not in its bitterness or its transformation. Yeah, that bitterness is still super prominent. At a certain point, we would expect that the bitterness will start to fade and the tea will, get a little bit easier to take in at some point. I don't think I'm going to get to that point on this episode. This tea is quite strong, though. Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. I would say the first steep was definitely the most bitter. Perhaps I just steeped that a second too long. This one and the second one, you can see the appeal, but it's not quite there. It's still pretty strong. Another way you could go about this is underleafing it a little bit. I went for full leaf just because I wanted to kind of showcase how this, tea category is a little unique. So yeah, let me know how you like these teas. Thank you again to Jack Flapper for the sample. Help us get to 10,000 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button. Releasing lots of videos. I've been doing 2 a week for a bit now, just because I have so many ideas for these episodes that the backlog of ideas is just piling up so quickly that I wanted to kind of temporarily go to 2 per week just to get through a bunch of these. So thank you all for tuning in. I will see y'all next time. Cheers.